Hello there my lovely jewelry makers, I'm Christina of CSLdesigns, and in today's tutorial I'm going to show you how to make this super elegant wire crochet ring, and it matches perfectly with the previous bracelet tutorial that I did, and there will also be some matching earrings of course. You'll be able to find them in the description box down below. Now if you like what I do and want to see more, please feel free to check out my channel where I have loads more tutorials within many different mediums and other types of content as well. And if you want to support me, you can always like, share and subscribe. There's a super thanks button below the video. And you can also join the channel on my Patreon. But if you want to learn how to make this super elegant wire crochet ring, then keep watching. So these are the materials that we're going to need. I'm using a regular round copper wire and the gauge is a 0.4mm, and this is going to be used for the whole ring. And then we need our beads. I'm using 3mm bicone beads, but you can easily use other shapes as well, like rounds. And I've just chosen to use two colours, but you can of course mix that up however you want to as well. As for the tools, we need some flush cutters so we can cut our wire, tweezers and nose pliers to help manipulate the wire, a ring mandrel to help size and shape the ring, and finally we of course need our crochet hook. So I'm using a 1.25mm, so just make sure it's on the smaller side like this. Now you can find the full tool and material list in the description box below the video along with useful links. Otherwise let's get it all ready and let's get started. Now as for the wire, we're going to be working with that still attached to the reel, as it's hard to know exactly how much we're going to need, and also there's no need to cut it off. Now to get started, we of course need to grab our crochet hook along with the wire here, and I'm just going to start towards the end but leave a bit of a tail just so we have something to hold on to, and finish off with at the end. Then what we need to do is start making the first loop, and we're going to do that simply by putting our hook on the shaft part of the hook there, under the wire, and just twisting it, and that creates our first loop. Now from there we're just going to start out by making a chain of loops, and this will determine the size of your ring. So the way you do that is by having the hook through the loop there and then grabbing the wire and pulling it through to the front. And then we want to push the hook through this loop here up to the shaft part before the handle, and then I like to just pull it out a bit. Now it's most fiddly here in the beginning because we don't have a whole lot to hold on to, but it'll get easier as soon as we get a couple of loops made. And then what we want to do is rotate the hook so it faces away from us, and then flatten the loop to sit down nice and flat next to the other one. So you can see the loops are now flat next to each other, and you want to continue like this. So again, your hook is through the loop, you grab the wire, bring it through to the front, push your hook to the shaft part and then pull it out a little, rotate your hook so the hook part is facing away from you, and then flatten it down. So again, this loop sits flat next to the rest, and you can see we're starting to form a chain of loops here, and you want to keep doing this until you have the length that you need that will suit the size ring you want. Now you do need to make sure that it's an even amount of loops, so that's going to fit with the pattern. So that's my fourth one, and like I said, we now have a little bit to hold on to, so it's getting easier. Just pull your loop through and flatten it down, continuing our chain here. So just keep going until you have the amount of loops that you need. So making my last loop here of the ones that I need, and then we can just have a look. Your chain will look a little something like that, and like I said, just make sure it's an even amount of loops. Now the way you can figure out how long you need to make the chain is by of course knowing your ring size, and then you can just take the chain here and shape it around the ring mandrel, and the point where the two ends meet up is then the size you want the ring to be. And you can then stop, or you can make more loops if you haven't quite reached the right size yet. So that's just how to figure out the size. Now what we need to do now is, now that I know this is the size I need, we need to make one extra loop, because this loop is going to be what connects the two ends together, which we are going to do straight away. So I'm leaving my hook through that final loop, which was the extra loop. Then I'm making sure the chain here is not twisted, and then just kind of shape it around so it's going to have the ring shape, and just put your hook through the very first chain that we made. So you now have 2 chains on your hook, and then we just want to sort out the wire tails here and grab the length of wire that's attached to the reel that we're working with. The tail we have at the beginning, you can just kind of bring that out of the way. And then to connect the 2 ends together, because right now it's still loose, we want to then just pull up the wire and basically make a new loop. So push the crochet hook through like we've been doing, pull it out a bit, and then the 2 ends will stay together and we have the basic shape of the ring. But of course we need to keep working on it to get the rest of the design. So to do that, from here I'm going to put my crochet hook back in through the loop, and then I'm going to rotate my hook all the way to the other side, so basically flip it 180, and then I'm going to flatten this loop out and away from the center chain here, or the spine you could call it, and flatten it down, coming away from it like this. And this is going to be the beginning of our design on the side. So this is our first loop of that, and then just grab the wire, bring it up through the active loop, and then push it down, rotate your hook and flatten that down. So you can see we are now working away from the center chain that we made. So what we need is to basically make a little chain here coming away that we're doing. Flatten that down. I now have 3, and we're going to need 1 more. So bring your wire through and make another loop here. Now what we're going to do is this last loop that we just made, the active loop, is going to stay on the hook, and with that on the hook I'm then going to bring my hook through 2 loops up from where this chain is coming from, or where the connection point is. So if you go back to where this chain we just made with the 4 loops is coming from, we're going to skip the one after it and then go through the one after that. So basically go through the second loop after the connection point. So that means put the hook down through there, push it up to the shaft part, and then I like to just pull on my active working wire so it pulls the active loop that was already on the hook to sit down nice and close to the one we just went through. And then also you can kind of help this along. These chains that we made, they're going to end up sitting on the side and kind of being a little flourish, pointing out to the side like that. To fasten that in place, I'm going to grab the wire, pull up a new loop, and then again I'm going to stay on this side of our work for now. So I'm going to rotate my hook all the way back out to that side, and then flatten this loop down out here in the same direction as the first little extra chain that we made, coming away from the center. And basically what we're going to do is keep repeating this. So grab the wire, bring it through the loop, flatten it down. So we're now making another chain coming away from the center, and we're going to make the same amount of loops in this one. So I've made 2, we need to make 4, so that's number 3. And of course you want to just keep rotating your piece however you need to and hold on to it the best you can. Pull up the wire, flatten that down, and then it can be helpful to kind of just help shape this little flourish on the side with your fingers, because we want it to kind of stick outwards on the side here. So with the active loop on the hook, I'm gonna, from the previous point where we connected, we're gonna skip the next loop and then go through the one after that. So we're skipping one and going through the second, and then pulling tight on the working wire there, making sure that it's sitting nicely on the side. We can also go back and fix that later on, so it's not too crucial. Then I'm going to pull up a new loop, which then fastens this connection point in place. And then to make the next little flourish, bring this loop out to the same side and then keep repeating this. So I now need to make another little chain coming away from the center chain here of 4 loops. Like I just showed you twice, we're now making the 3rd one. And you just want to keep going like this all the way around until we then end back up where we started them out. So I made it all around back to where we started out. So we just need to connect this last one. I have my 4 loops on this chain, and then we need to go through the loop where we started the first 4 loop chain from. So just make sure we're through the active loop, we have that on our hook, and then we're skipping one and going through that loop in the spine, you could call it, where we started the first chain from. That already has a couple of loops on top of each other, and pull it nice and tight. And then that's the final little part with the flourish on this side. So pull a new loop through to the front and pull it out a bit, and then we basically need to repeat this but on the other side. So what I'm going to do is literally just rotate the ring, and you can just tuck your tail away however you need to so it doesn't get in the way. And like I said, repeat on the other side by simply then taking this chain we have on a hook and bringing it out and flatten it to that other side, so that's now sticking away. And then we just want to do the exact same thing, bring up a new loop, and here we need to make that 4 loop chain, so that's 2, 3, and the 4th one. So we have our 4 loops there. We then need to shape it a little bit, and then with that final loop on our hook we want to go back to the spine of the ring. So the loop where this chain of 4 loops are coming from, we want to skip the next one and then go through the one after that, which is also one that we're connected to on the other side. So that means we already have multiple loops layered on top of each other. So just go through there, we're connecting through the same ones that we did on the other side. And don't worry too much about how it looks yet, because it kind of just looks like a bit of a mess, but it will get better and neater as we go. And we can also just adjust and fix things at the end. Then pull a new loop through, and that fastens this in place. And then just like before, we need to bring this out to the same side that we're working on, and then create a new chain of 4 loops. So just grab your wire, bring it through, and flatten this loop down next to the first one we just brought out. We now have 2, and then we have 3, and just like on the other side and the beginning of this side here, we need 4, and that is the 4th one, which is the one we stay through with our hook, and then we go back to where this chain is coming from, skip the next one, and go through the one after that, which, like I said before, already has multiple layers of loops on top of each other. And then just pull this nice and tight before we then pull up a new loop and repeat the process. So just like on the other side, keep going like this, working your way around until we meet back up with where we started. So now I made it all the way back around again, and I have my 4 loops on the final chain. I just need to connect it back to where the first chain of 4 loops is coming from. So just put your hook down through there and pull up a loop to secure it in place. And then we have something that looks a little bit more like the final result. So don't worry if it looks a bit messy. Like I said, we can go back and adjust things, but also we aren't quite done yet. So have your hook through the final loop there, then what I'm going to do is basically go all the way around just through the spine or the center chain where we started out making the ring and that we connected in the beginning, and literally go from loop to loop, and that is just going to reinforce it. So it doesn't matter what direction you go in, so you could just continue how you're holding it. So make sure you have your loop out and then just rotate it and put your hook down through the very next loop down to the shaft part there, and pull the wire tight, and then make sure to grab it to pull up a new loop, and again rotate that away from you. And then while you have that loop on your hook, go down through the next loop in the spine or the center chain of the ring. Then grab your wire, pull up a new loop, and continue like this all the way around until we reach where we started out. Now if you're not quite sure where you originally started out, so when you would have reached that point, you should be able to use your original tail as a guide, because that should be approximately your starting point. So now I made it back to the beginning, and it's already neatened up the ring a lot more, and it's also made it much more rigid and solid there, so it really helps strengthen the piece as well. Of course, if you want to, you could always go around again, but I'm going to stop here, and then what I'm going to do is cut off the wire, because we're done making the wire crochet. You just want to leave a tail of about 30 centimeters or so. Cut that off, and then I'm just going to grab my hook again and go through that last loop and just pull the wire all the way through, so it's now coming out to the top here. And I'm then going to use this length to attach my beads with as well. So the first thing I like to do is take this tail and just connect and fasten that final loop in place, because it's a little bit wobbly. So I like to just go from where this wire is coming out from, which is that final loop, and then go down through the next loop, just put the end of the wire through, and then pull it all the way through. Make sure you don't get any kinks or bends, and then pull it through to then fasten that loop in place. So from here we can go straight on to adding our beads. Now I'm going to do that along the center spine there, and I'm just going to do it on every other loop. Of course you can add your beads however you want to, but I first of all want to get my wire in position. So I'm going to bring the end of my wire up through the same loop that I'm coming down through, but just making sure that I'm going between some different wires so we don't just pull it straight back out. But we do have a lot of crisscrossing wires because of the wire crochet, so just pull that up nice and tight. And then how I want my beads to sit is across a loop, but with the side facing outward. So that's why I'm coming up before the loop where I want the bead to sit. I'm then going to grab a bead, add that to the end of the wire and let it drop all the way down, and then it's going to end up sitting across like this. So it's the side of the bead that's pointing outwards, and you can see that colour and sparkle rather than the hole. Now I'm going to then skip the loop where the bead is going to sit, and then go down through the next loop, and then again just pull the wire through nice and gently. And I like to just make sure the bead is going to end up sitting in the right position, so it's going to go sideways across that loop there. And then to get in the position for the next bead, I'm going to come up through the same loop that I just went down, but again just moving to a different place, making sure there's some wires in between so we don't just pull the wire straight back out. Avoid any kinks. And as I'm pulling this tight, I like to put my thumb on the bead that I just added so it doesn't get loose when pulling this wire tight. My wire is now in the right position. I'm going to grab my next bead. I'm just alternating the colors here. Let that drop all the way down, and again that's going to sit sideways across the next loop here. So I'm going to skip the loop where the bead is going to sit on, but then go down through the loop after that, and then pull the wire down and make sure the bead is going to sit sideways. And again, just come up in the same loop, but in between some different wires. Pull the wire up, put your thumb on the bead so it doesn't become loose, and then we're in position to add the next bead. So you just want to keep going like this all the way around until we get back to where we started out. So now I've got my beads all the way around. Then what we need to do is get rid of our excess wire here because we are done using it. Now what I like to do is go to the inside, kind of the back of the piece, and find where the wire is coming out from, and then just find where there's a wire in the crochet that's close to that, where I can wrap this around a couple of times to basically secure it in place. Now if you struggle a bit, I do find that taking your pliers and just going to the very end of the wire and basically creating a bit of a hook shape in the wire will help you get more into those little nooks and crannies exactly where you want to go, and come back out so you're able to grab hold of the wire. So bringing the wire through, and then you just take your pliers as well if you need to grab the end of it, and then pull it all the way through nice and gently. And then just make sure to pull that all the way tight so the loop isn't loose in any way. And I just like to go around that same space a couple of times, like I said, just so we wrap around and secure the wire in place. So something like that is good enough. I'm just going to bring the wire through and bring it over as if I was going to wrap one more time. But instead of doing that, I'm just going to go in and cut off the excess, making sure to not cut any of the wire crochet, of course. You can wrap a couple more times if you want to. And then that end that you're going to be able to feel your fingers, just make sure to tuck that away, especially because it's on the inside and we don't want it to catch or scratch or irritate the skin as we're wearing the ring, of course. So just tuck that away, make sure you can't feel it, and then finish off the other end as well in the same way. And this is then the point where we can do any final touches because we're really done creating the ring. So this is where you can grab the crochet hook and then use that as a tool to just even things out if you feel the need to. So put that through any loops you need to kind of reshape a little bit, or you feel like they need to become a little bit more uniform. You can go through and just use your hook to reshape it and make it that bit more even all the way around. You can see this one here, it's a little bit tucked down compared to the rest. So put the hook through and you can pull it out a bit, and it just looks more like the other loops. So you can just do that anywhere that you feel the need to. And finally, if you feel like it's not quite got the right shape, you can always put it back on your ring mandrel and just reshape it to get that nice and comfortable ring shape. And just make sure it's nice and round all the way. And then once you've done all that, you'll have your finished ring ready to wear. So I really hope you enjoyed the tutorial for this super elegant wire crochet ring. And don't forget to check out the matching parts of the set. You can just use the link in the description box down below. Otherwise, I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Thank you so much for watching it, and I'll see you in the next one.